Cool. So a quick introduction about BookingGo. We've been operating as a business in Manchester for about 15 years now. It's gone through several different iterations, different kind of names, but we've been here for a while. We're pretty much committed to Manchester, which is quite a good thing, I think. So even though we're kind of a really good a relationship with Booking now, we still kind of want to kind of maintain our independence here. We are very much the ground transport division of Booking.com. We are responsible for, obviously, rental cars, renting a car, surprise, surprise. We've got a kind of our own kind of taxi division, kind of competitive for Uber. Sadly, that's the kind of best way to introduce ourselves. Before long, it will be Uber, kind of competitor for taxis, BookingGo. We also have quite an interesting new business called Tickets, which is all about buses and trains tickets. So the idea, I can't tell you too much about this, but the idea with interaction with Booking.com is that we're kind of forming a global experience management, a whole kind of thing, everyone coming together to kind of a connected trip. So making transport part of your holiday experience, making everything easier. Cool. I didn't really talk about my title. My title is Lessons Learned from Introducing Data Science to BookingGo. So a bit about me, PhD in machine learning from the life sciences kind of division, predicting how proteins interact, predicting pharmaceutical challenges, who's going to respond to a drug, who's not going to respond, analysing data from various different reasons. Did a brief postdoc in cancer research, and then moved into, after a spell in doing kind of biostatistics in the pharmaceutical industry, actually doing some data science consulting in various different organisations. Interesting projects in London for hedge funds, moving towards kind of government work wherever it came into. So I've got a kind of background in consultancy. After that I spent a couple of years working in insurance and working in a market research kind of company, building interesting models about what you do when you're listening to music and other things. So I thought coming to work for rentalcars.com as it was back then was a kind of a golden opportunity. Here's me as a prospector. I knew about data science. I knew kind of how things worked. I knew how companies can use data science. It's going to be exciting times. There's a huge amount of information we've got on our customers. There's a huge amount of opportunity here to enact some of the things I've learned over this time. It's going to be an amazing opportunity for me. So fantastic. I thought I'll join and I'll change the business for the better. It will be an amazing impact. Pretty much, here comes the data science. So, woohoo, I'm here, we're going to deliver stuff, it's going to be amazing. Machine learning is really good at kind of complex tasks, the kind of complex tasks that BookingGo has to deal with all the time. So you've probably seen this XKCD comment before, everyone knows it. This is part one. I thought, hey, you guys are struggling with all kinds of issues. I'm here to solve those issues. I'm going to do it with machine learning. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to revolutionize your business. We'll come back to that cartoon in a second. First task was ranking, ordering our product. So our product is complicated. It's a little bit more complicated than a hotel, although people have preferences for various different things that we can detect. It's quite a personal choice about whether you want something or not. Although it's kind of quite easy to dismiss as, oh yeah, the cheapest car is the most important one. We don't really care about anything else. And one of the kind of major caveats we've got is that you're not kind of just kind of renting a car, you're borrowing an asset from a different company. And so there's an element of risk involved. And so you've got to take into consideration are they prepared to pay back £2,000 worth of excess if you ding it? I mean, that's another kind of complexity which has to be kind of put on top of this other thing. And so, we mitigate this by selling insurance and insurance is a whole kind of complex area in itself. So there are lots of kind of complex things that kind of can happen with ranking. Ranking is a kind of a big area in machine learning. It's a whole kind of big subclass. Most people know about it. Learning to rank is kind of the description for it. Essentially kind of ordering vehicles in a kind of a sensible way. There are several different approaches to it. Going back to Dimmer's talk about kind of how you build up complexity. You can kind of you can build more things into it. You can kind of make things more complicated. But let's start simple. What's the most bookable car? Okay, so identify that. There are many different ways you can think about that might be relevant. And so just ordering it in that kind of way. That's called point-wise learning to rank. You can move on, you can talk about actually make it a little bit more complicated, because actually a car by itself doesn't really have its own value in a rank, because you can compare it with other things. So you do pairwise ranking. You start comparing two different propositions at the same time. As you go through the full list, you do all sorts of kind of individual pairwise comparisons and build up a big picture, and you can have a better view of kind of what's relevant and what's irrelevant. And eventually we can start getting onto listwise ranking, where we can take all the kind of ideas about what we know about people, what we think is relevant, and we can put it into a big, very complicated, sophisticated system. They can spit out in one go a complete rank, rather like kind of YouTube do their kind of rankings based on what you viewed. You kind of learn about preferences, you learn about individuals. That's kind of where we're going, hopefully. So I'm very proud to say that this is a rank that my machine learning algorithm has worked on. I can't tell you how far along we're in that journey, but we're kind of some way into that kind of process of building up the complexity, understanding more about our business, understanding more about our product, and kind of putting it into action. We're kind of in this kind of flywheel scope. We're enacting what Dimmer talks about, kind of that process of where the value comes from. How do we kind of enact more? Should we put more effort in, or should we make it worse? It's not worse, but should we kind of quit while we're ahead and move on to something else? So this is the first project. It's kind of been okay. But reality has bitten several times. So things are looking good. So I kind of pointed to a nice rosy picture. Yes, we've got machine learning. So this is the second part of the same cartoon. You spend a long time and you don't really make any progress. And it's really annoying. It's really frustrating. And that's partly because, coming from a consultancy perspective, kind of moving into this kind of area, I didn't realize quite how important A/B testing was, and kind of the reality of actually what is good for a model and what's good for your customers may not be exactly the same thing. You may make fantastic success, but until you show it to your customers and your customers like it, then it's not going to go into production. People aren't going to use it. We're not going to rely on that to make our ranking decisions. So this is kind of the A/B process. We kind of put it into test. We test it whether our customers like it, and if our customers do like it, if it does kind of, it makes us money, or it makes kind of stronger interactions with our company, then it stays on. But it's hard. So we had several different kind of attempts at kind of getting this thing working, and that's partly due to the fact that BookingGo employs really good people, and so although they haven't been learning for very long, they know what customers like, and they can put these into kind of a set of rules, not necessarily machine learning, but kind of a set of an algorithm themselves, which kind of does the same thing. And so beating that set of rules is not trivial. Trust me, I've tried several times. I have managed it, but it was difficult. There are no easy machine learning wins, so I don't think. I mean, I know you said there was, but if you've got a new product, maybe you can start cleverly and intelligently right from the beginning. But in an existing product, you think, oh yeah, I can improve it with machine learning. You can't always do that, and you can't really be disappointed by that. I've got to kind of, you've got to just dust yourself off and pick yourself up. The hard ones do really need some serious kind of thinking about. So algorithms are great, but they also can be flawed in some ways, and so it's all about understanding what your customer wants from my perspective. So I had to think about, actually, halfway through my time here, am I the supersized data scientist I thought I was? I mean, in principle, this is an easily Googleable picture you can find on the internet about, oh yes, you should be a fantastic data scientist, you're the superhero, go into your company and change the world, everyone's crying out for you. And in theory, in principle, yeah, all of these things are right. But did we take the right approach when introducing data science to BookingGo? Maybe. So here's some lessons that I kind of a public retrospective, if you like, about kind of me viewing what we achieved and what should I have done, and how did what kind of things worked well and what things kind of didn't work well. So after about 10 minutes, I'm kind of actually talking about the meat of my slides. So start off with projects. How can machine learning kind of fit in? They always talk about, if you read too many blogs, the most crucial kind of interest or kind of trait that a data scientist should have is curiosity. You should kind of really be interested in the problem. And that's great, but actually you really need to be able to kind of deliver that satisfaction in terms of actually turning that curiosity into something deliverable. Dimmer kind of mentioned this as well, it's the value from your data science, kind of understanding, oh, it's a problem, I can fix it, but is that going to work? That's kind of where things come from. So kind of choosing the right project to kind of keep that kind of momentum going is kind of hugely important. And one of the important things I think I learned is how important stakeholder engagement was. So I could turn up and I could find all these kind of potential opportunities for machine learning, but until people you work with are kind of like, yes, of course, I want you to come and work with us, then you're not really going to achieve anything. You can do an amazing algorithm somewhere, but until it actually works, until actually people go, actually, I trust that, I'm going to get that involved. I kind of can see where you're coming from. Then it's never going to kind of take hold and prove the value that you kind of want it to. So discussing projects, where it's going to go, what the value is, with someone's kind of really important. We also really need a good product owner from a data science perspective, because someone who understands value actually goes, no, I understand the business better than you do, because when you're new to the business, you don't know that well. Someone who go, actually, no, I trust this project. This project's a good one, because actually we think this value is X. This is how we can sell it to the business. So 2 good product owners were kind of crucially important for us. One who knows their domain, and one who knows the business as a whole and how to kind of deliver things. But when it comes to kind of projects, there are good projects and there are bad projects. And what defines those 2 things, I think I've learned in kind of on these 2 dimensions. Something that we can deliver quickly, something we can iterate on, something that's kind of a nice, easy win that's also valuable, is obviously exactly what we're aiming for. What we started with ranking was valuable, but really hard. I'm going to say it now, it's been difficult. From lots of different reasons. It's not just from kind of a machine learning and kind of customer perspective, but also the amount of engineering you need to kind of build into a company. So if your company isn't really good with kind of serving machine learning already, then you have to set up the APIs and the systems to put machine learning onto a box and make it interactionable with the site. It's got to deliver, as Dimma says, in like half a second. That's a big ask. And doing that from scratch is quite difficult, and kind of working with the right people makes it really useful. Projects which incidentally aren't insightful or valuable, you should kind of ignore, because obviously what's the point of doing it? So it should be so far back, you should kind of almost ignore it for now. Again, that's something I stole from the internet. Keep calm and be ruthless. Really kind of cut down your projects, because it takes far longer to deliver projects than you think it's going to. They're really hard sometimes. Just be really kind of strict with what you're doing, what you're working on. So going back to that kind of easy, valuable kind of spread, this is the kind of things that I think I should have thought about at the beginning. What's kind of good, what's bad, what's deliverable, what's not deliverable. In the top left, the easy and valuable are kind of where we should have started with, right? Nice, simple segmentation projects, stuff that can be done. It doesn't need to be served live. We can put it into a database. We can put it into a nice table. We can consume that the next day. We can learn something about who's on our site. We can market to them differently. We can change the site maybe potentially if we see someone from a particular location. All these things are probably more sensible projects than we should have started with. We started obviously on the top right with the hard and valuable. That's what we thought was valuable. Live predictions. These are, well, in particular, ranking is subject to kind of product changes, to taste changes. I didn't realize quite how much that fluctuates as well. So SUVs are now absolutely where it's at. People love their SUVs. But last year, not so much. So that kind of change in actually kind of attitude to SUVs is a big thing. And it's really important to kind of consider how much of an impact that has on your models, and design that into your models, and that makes everything a whole lot more complicated. So it was hard because it was live. It was also hard because there were all sorts of factors we didn't really think about. There are loads of easy insightful projects, but they're mainly being done probably by the good analysts in your company. Probably some of them are starting to look at those kind of easy and valuable ones as well. I know it's a bit kind of vague, my split. I know there's going to be lots of kind of questions about actually whether my split is correct, but that's really not the subject of this. Hard and insightful are kind of things you've got to do at some point. So understanding really what your product is. So I talked about there's kind of tastes with products, there's also kind of understanding of risk. And so you kind of group those things together into kind of usable and actionable insights. And this is kind of a big set of complicated kind of statistical tests you've got to run to understand exactly what people consider to be the same, what people consider to be kind of flexible on. And we've got to do it, but it shouldn't be something you start with, potentially. Cool. So one of the things that one of the lessons I also learned was that the scale of kind of the kind of projects I was working on as a consultant, and the scale of the projects that BookingGo work on is so massively different. Consultancy projects are pretty well defined. You go in, you've got a month or so, you go out, you know exactly what's going on. You've got a set of data where there's a clear definition. Here, there's not such that clear definition doesn't really exist. You have to define what the value is. You have to kind of understand the kind of process. You understand the value, and you've got to kind of communicate that as well as you can. And that's kind of a difficult thing, and a big kind of step up, which I found difficult. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying that's probably what most people find kind of going into these kind of companies. But what's really exciting is that it's really fulfilling coming from a kind of consultancy side and kind of working on short projects that you think deliver something. You kind of see you can kind of get into those kind of flywheels that, again, Dimmer mentioned, in that you suddenly write, okay, now we see how we're changing the business. Well, that's really cool. So can we use the changes we've learned to make another change? Can we iterate on this? Can we build something else out of it? Can we build up this kind of insight we're getting from our models and kind of learn a lot about it? And that's actually kind of what I found really kind of most rewarding about kind of being a data scientist in BookingGo compared to data scientist in consultancy beforehand. But scale of our business is quite massive. And this brings a whole set of problems which I wasn't really prepared for either, in that when you've got a small project and you're kind of working with people, they know exactly they've got an idea about what it is. But when you're dealing with customers throughout the world, they're a whole different set of problems, a whole kind of another level of complexity which I hadn't even considered, which is that you can kind of make, as statisticians, you have an idea, you kind of go, actually, I think this is kind of what happens. You build that into your models and you test it and you go, oh, okay. But when you've got customers throughout the world, turns out people really do like diesel SUVs. I mean, I thought they were kind of dying out, but no, they're really big and they're really kind of popular. And that kind of taste from somewhere else and somewhere in the world is a really important thing to kind of factor in. And so therefore there are factors in your model which you didn't realize you had to consider, but you do. And so the whole kind of the global business is that kind of scale is really kind of quite exciting. And you've got impacts with data. So obviously one of the biggest things is, what on earth time zone is this? You get some data. Is it in UTC? Is it in local time? Is it in GMT? Oh my goodness, that was a whole different level of complexity, which again, you'll come across at some point. Cool. Another good, important thing to think about in terms of kind of setting up data science was people. I didn't kind of justify, I didn't really understand quite how much people and kind of being able to kind of communicate things was to actually the success of this kind of project. No robots. We need a great team, and we need kind of a great team spirit. And so we have to celebrate everything together. We've celebrated successes, and we've celebrated successes in this business with champagne. But we have to celebrate our failures as well. We've got to treat those failures not as, a failed experiment, back to the drawing board. No, you've got to learn from that. So a previous boss of mine came up with this idea of a fail cake. I believe it's popular in Facebook, where, you failed, have a cake. We've not done that yet, because our failures, I don't think, have been that bad enough to kind of warrant actually properly dragging yourself up and picking yourself up and understanding it. But there are always going to be mistakes, and you've got to learn from that, and you've got to have a really good kind of team culture that kind of goes, yeah, don't worry about it, fine, pull ourselves up, let's go on, keep pushing. And eventually, as I said, you'll get there. But what that kind of great team comprises, I've banged on about product owners a lot, I'm afraid, is you need someone with domain knowledge. They can't kind of have mixed feelings about, oh no, you'll come here to replace me with a robot. They've got to kind of be on board, and that kind of communication to be able to kind of go, actually, don't worry about it. we're not going to replace you with a couple of H2O instances and a couple of Kubernetes clusters. It's fine. There'll still be a value. You'll still be able to kind of produce something back give something back to the business. Because they also know what works and what doesn't. And if you don't have them on board, they won't tell you what doesn't work. Or they won't tell you what does work, rather. Me, as a data scientist, it can't be all about ego. I've seen that happen a few times. The whole, I'm a data scientist, show me your data. It's not going to work. You need, again, because you have to be part of the team, you have to kind of be, this is a big kind of team effort, we need to have a big push. Just the ML. We've worked with really good data analysts who kind of can build dashboards, who can track things. They can define metrics. We kind of know how we're changing the business. We know, therefore, if we're kind of making mistakes. We know if things aren't going particularly well. We can kind of, they can kind of provide that kind of feedback loop really, really quickly, providing insight to both us and to the business as a whole, which was never really there before somehow. So, yeah, it's very important. We're also working with an awesome data engineer who can deliver these ML. So again, Dimmer mentioned, if you've got a fantastic Perl machine learning kind of thing, you don't have to kind of recode it yourself. You don't want to be able to kind of find a way of transporting it into something that kind of can be served immediately in a kind of a really stable environment, because that's a big problem. And you can't do that without someone who really knows what they're talking about. Again, an engineer who can kind of really deliver APIs was crucial to these projects. And a PO. Someone who you can't be the kind of the nice kind of, oh yeah, well, I want some exciting insight from you guys, as an analyst. You want someone who can actually go, right, I'm setting the schedule, I'm pushing all of you. If you're not getting it done by Friday, there's going to be hell to pay. I mean, not quite that bad, but you need to have someone who's kind of who's going to push the team. Because yeah, we're going to keep delivering, we're going to keep delivering, we're going to keep delivering. Only get so far in a business. You need to kind of say, actually, we're going to deliver by Tuesday, or we're not doing it, or we're going to move on to a different project. So having a good PO internally, someone who knows a little bit about data science, is really useful. Cool. And finally, communicate. Cannot stress this enough, how much you have to tell people what you're doing and how it works and how the business is going to be different and how great it's going to be. And for quite interesting reasons. So this is an example we've had. So the leadership team were on board. We're delivering data science. It's going to be fantastic. I'll explain the machine learning to you. Wonderful. Success is definitely guaranteed. So we started the experiment. Nobody told me that the entire business needs to be informed of this. Because as soon as the business kind of gets a whiff of, ooh, machine learning is on, you are going to be the bogeyman for every single problem that happens during the week of your experiment starts. Every single kind of problem. Oh, machine learning. It's a black box. Nobody knows what it's doing. Communicate to stop this happening. I cannot express this enough. Because this idea that the robots are coming and you're going to bring death and destruction, sadly seems to be quite ingrained in certain people. So tell people what you're doing. Tell people it's not that bad. What we found is quite useful is earning buy-in. Going through the same process for code testing. Telling people the machine learning will only work under these circumstances. And when it doesn't work, it'll default to something bad, normal. Essentially what we're trying to do here is kind of build up a set of processes that we can rely on. Kind of a nice data science process where we know where we're up to with particular projects, we know how it's going to work, and we can deliver stuff reliably. Again, it's a science, so you're not always going to be right. You've got hypotheses, you can test them. You can experiment with value, you can kind of go, actually, how much effort should we put in? Again, referring back to Dimmer here. Again, my former boss came up with this idea of a kind of the project ladder, kind of knowing where you are in the process, knowing how much buy-in you can get from your product owners, knowing how to deliver it, how many steps further we are away from kind of being massively successful. So that's kind of a really important thing by how we assess projects and also how we assess how far we're getting and how much more maturity there is. So this is great, and I think we're kind of at the bottom ladder a few times now. You guys must be iteratively kind of exploring new things, but Booking.com have got a way more mature kind of data science, what we're starting to kind of get involved in. So we're going to have more interactions with them, partly why Dimmer's here, to make this kind of us kind of align with their process so we can actually continuously develop and kind of explore those really exciting new areas. Cool. So where are we now? We have a model driving ranking. we've got another model and experiment that's out there doing okay. We've got lots of customer segmentation things out there, kind of exploring how our customers, what they want, how we can split them up to kind of work on different areas. We've got kind of interesting models about cancellations and segmentations. And we've got a recommendation system in development. We've got excellent insight, and we've started developing kind of a good agile practice to go alongside it. So, although Dimmer painted a fantastic picture of how data science at Booking.com is working, we are not there, but we're hoping to be there pretty soon. Cool, thanks.